Okay, so slicing and anti-aliasing and the dangers of both, and basically how a resin printer works. All right. So you'll have heard in many of my videos I talk about slicing. Slicing is where a piece of software, like the one we're in now, Lychee, draws a line through the model and takes a photo of it as an image. So Lychee happily allows us to visualize that. You can actually see that this is how this is going to print. So each of those little lines, each of these is saved as an image, and there'll be thousands of these images stacked on top of each other for every layer that's going to print. All right. Now we look in our human world, we look at this as a ring facing up, but in the real world, the ring actually faces upside down. So happily, we've got a simulator that allows us to simulate this. You've got a tank of resin here, and your first layer is a rectangle. So from the last video, you would have seen me showing you that rectangle. So if we look from underneath, there's a projector underneath here, and it's projecting that image that you see here, that red image. And then as the print gets taller and taller and taller, the part starts coming out of the resin like this. Image by image by image, it's exposed. All right. So the advantage of the fact that this is an image, right? So if we can zoom in a lot, you'll see that it actually, by the time it draws a line, there's a lot of jaggies. You see that's jaggy, 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 jaggy. All right. So you'll see that there's an anti-aliasing on off. You don't see it in the preview, unfortunately, but it does save the file with anti-aliasing. Literally the same in Photoshop. If you say anti-alias an image, it's going to find the edges here and it's going to smooth them out. So you're going to actually have less model fidelity. It's going to draw a line between here and here, and it's going to average all the points in between. So if you had writing inside here, you may lose some of the writing. But over here, it's more obvious what the advantage and the disadvantage of it is, right? You can see that at this particular angle, this model at this resolution would have a lot of jaggies, and especially round stuff would have a lot of jaggies, right? You've got to remember that this is an 0.3 millimeter post we're looking at. So in the real world, your eye can't even see that. All right. So the wax printer tends to leave this alone, but the wax printer leaves a 16 jaggy. In the resin world, that's a 25. It's a 25 all the way up to a 79 jaggy that gets smoothed out. So if you have very fine detail inside here, it just gets washed away. All right. So the anti-aliasing that I described in my videos is the evening of this image. It averages this image into a smoother shape, and by doing that, it averages the part. All right. So very fine detail on the inside of the part, text, etc., will tend to get averaged out. So again, just so we understand how the machine works, at the beginning of the print head is down against the base. So I don't think this is visualizing the head itself, but just imagine that there's a head on a screw and it's down the bottom here. And the very first layer that's going to be exposed is that rectangle, and then it's going to move its way up little bit by little bit by little bit by little bit in ring height, like something like 3,000 different images get exposed, and the part grows up out of the resin like this. All right, so I'm going to zoom in so there's a little bit more detail on it. So yeah, there isn't a layer count here anyway. Anyway, so you can see, yes, there's a layer count on the side there. So the part is growing up like this. And what all those supports are for is so that once the ring gets up to the point where you've got these additional parts coming in, see it in a minute, it'll make more sense, that this over here, at that layer, if you look at it, here was a very long, thin piece of resin sticking out here, and the resin's soft while it's printing, and that's very flexible, and the chances for that to come out warped or poor are quite high. So we start building a support to touch off on that, to give it a little bit of support so that the flexing of the printer doesn't damage that part, and this is holding it down over there. All right. And then similarly, as the part continues growing higher and it needs more supports here and here, then you'll see what the function of the supports are. So the supports just help it not fall apart through the grow process. Right? And then you can see the images we're talking about and the anti-aliasing we discussed. And then the part is finished.